Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am BorderWise and welcome back to From the Depths Most Wanted, the Megalodon, Part 2. Yes, Part 2. For a second I forgot how many I did of these. I've only done the one before. So, the other minute I was despairing, as I do, about how making a ship that can beat the Megalodon one-on-one is really time-consuming, and I wasn't feeling motivated to do it, and I was just filled with despair of hands is all I've got to work with. And then the thought occurred to me that perhaps should have occurred to me a lot sooner, that for demonstration purposes, there are a whole bunch of different really big nasty ships in the game, and to show off what works against the Meg, I can just, tweak one of those. I don't have to build something from scratch. This sounds really obvious when you say it out loud, but From the Depths is the kind of game where the bleeding obvious can sometimes take hundreds of hours to occur to you. So, this is a slightly modified Megalodon over here. We've got the original Meg over here. In case you're wondering how I'm doing this, I've changed my fleet colors to the Steel Striders just to fool you all completely. I can do that. I have the power. So, what prompted this? The things I've changed on here is basically in line with what I feel a few people would describe as, well, I guess would just be making it more meta. So, the Megalodon is a hugely formidable ship, and anyone who does not agree with that, I don't know why they wouldn't agree with that, because this thing is scary as hell. But it's not perfect, it does have flaws, and in particular, it's a faction craft, so it has to abide by certain rules. I can't entirely remember what those rules are, but it's got to follow them. Thankfully, us who are fighting against it don't have to follow any rules save our own. So, the biggest change is just, there's very, very little I've changed here, by the way. The most immediately noticeable thing is that I've stripped the paint off, and I didn't actually have a reason for doing that, apart from I felt like it. But the biggest change is the ammunition, like what this thing is lobbing. So, in fact, that's really the only change. I haven't actually made any structural changes to this at all, because you don't need to. This thing has really good active defense of all kinds. It's very thickly armored. There's not much to change, really. But for the sake of reference, over here, on our friend the Meg, this is the kind of shell it lobs out of its main guns, and it has 12 of them. 500mm, 6-meter long shells, 75,000 rail draw each, and they're basically super gravitation hollow point sabot rounds. And you can argue about how to pronounce sabot, sabot, in the comments below, all you wish. I'm going to say sabot because it sounds French and sexy. So this is a very strong shell, and the advantage that hollow point has is that it does not waste damage. If it hits something, there's no over-penetration, there's no area of effect that goes behind it and doesn't get used. It just imparts all the thump into the target and it goes squish, and blocks fly off, and it's a really good time. But the thing is, it doesn't really penetrate the target very well. It does take a chunk out of it, but the Meg was not really designed, I feel, to fight things like itself. So these are very good shells, very good guns, but the main change I've made to them is that I've switched them to penetrators, and kind of very quickly improvised penetrators, by the way. I've changed the shell as little as possible. So, instead of sabot, it just has solid warhead bodies, it's got an armor-piercing head, and it's got two frag warhead shells, just frag warheads set to 23 degrees, which isn't a super good idea, but it means that all the fragments are going in a very tight cone, which means they get deeper. So that's the only reason really to do this. Usually you want to set this to 45, 90, 130 degree angle for anything that isn't a timed fuse, and for a timed fuse you usually want 180 degrees. But this penetrates really, really deeply. In fact, almost too deeply. Like I said, this is it took me all of a few seconds to make this change, and the armor pierce is not fantastic, but it does 33,000 kinetic damage, more than, so it doesn't really need to. And arguably you could just make these pure AP and just wing it, but if this thing gets through all the a thick layer of armor, and it really wrecks the insides of something. So that's the main change. This is ludicrously overkill for penetrating most things, but against really big, heavily armored things, like for instance the Megalodon, these shells are actually kind of good. What else have I changed? So, speaking of ammunition, I've changed the large missiles over here on the original Meg. These are EMP frag, which is, you know, perfectly fine. They do a lot of damage. You don't want them to hit you ever. The only change I've made is that I've basically made these improvised kinetic missiles. So if you really want to go nuts on the kinetic missiles, you would use a thumper head and use some other form of guidance. You use remote guidance. You'd use laser beam riders. You'd use, like, you know, you'd use something else. Even lure guidance if you know how to do lure. I've just swapped these out. Two reasons. Firstly, large kinetic missiles really hurt, and they're efficient damage dealers for the same reason that that hollow point shells are. They don't waste damage. In fact, the only way they really can waste damage is if they hit a sub-object, and, you know, they just delete the whole thing in the sub-object, and the damage isn't propagated to the main hull. That's the only reason, that's the only way they really waste any of their damage, so they're kind of efficient like that. And they also have a lot of health, so these have 40,800 health, and meanwhile, over here, these things have less than half of that, actually. They have 18,000 health, which means these things are much better at getting through active defenses like lambs, interceptors, and seaways. And oh boy, the Meg has pretty darn good lambs, interceptors, and seaways. It's got this railgun seaways on the back here, which I keep forgetting to reverse engineer. It's got a ridiculously strong lamb, so you see here, the sustained damage per second of this is kind of ridiculous. It's like 23,000, and it has a bunch of nodes, so it bursts very effectively. And then it's got a whole mob of missile interceptors just here just because it can. And it's got decoys and all that stuff, so missiles with a lot of health have a much, much better chance of actually hitting the Meg. And last but not least, the Megalodon has big scary torpedoes, and they're just pure explosive because that's a sensible thing to put on torpedoes. Hits the target, it goes kablooey, it gets that nice bonus damage that missiles. As far as I know, like, I never remember if it's just missiles that get a bonus to HE damage below the water, or if it's everything. Please remind me which it is if you happen to know. But yeah, so that's very good, but I decided to switch that up a little bit. And I've turned these into frag penetrators as well, because again, large torpedoes, large and huge torpedoes, actually work pretty well with frag, because when you lob 37 fragments, each one doing almost 23,000 damage each, they reach into the innards of a craft a lot better than an explosive warhead does. So again, a similar story. In order to effectively fight the Meg, you gotta gut it, so to speak. So yeah, that's the only really things I've changed. I've changed the missiles, torpedoes, and I've changed what shell is being lobbed here, and I've stripped the paint off, for giggles. That's basically it. The result is actually kind of significant. These things are almost identical, so it's not exactly a curb stomp, but this thing has a definite advantage that is very noticeable. So, to show that definite advantage, I'm going to hop into the custom battle simulator, to put these two against each other and show off what I'm talking about, and I will see you there. Alrighty, so here we are all set up in the custom battle simulator type thing, which I don't know what to call for some reason. Just so everyone knows, each team gets 500,000 materials, opposing teams spawn 1,500 meters apart. We've got the Meg, and we've got the other Meg. The rules are as follows. I'm not going to go too into details with this. Basically, this is a campaign rules, so to speak. And there's no time limit, so you can watch these two batter each other non-stop. So, let us begin, and we can immediately see the difference in this kind of not perfect mirror match. Flawed mirror match, we can say. Adjusted mirror match. And really all this is demonstrating what you, Intrepid from the Depths player, need to do in order to beat the Meg on its own terms, because a lot of Steel Strider's vessels are like this. in that you essentially, if you want to fight, unless you want to use a lot of exploits, in which case go for it, I shan't judge, you basically have to beat them at their own game. And you'll notice that initially the regular Megalodon has the advantage HP-wise in terms of what damage is dishing, because those are hollow point shells, and this is the part where the game thinks that they might collide, and that's bad. Also completely okay, gotta remember, like, oh yeah, so initial advantage is the Meg, but very important thing to note, one thing I did not change is the main AI and what kind of blocks it targets. That is because on the regular Megalodon, the AI is set to aim for clusters of blocks, to aim below the waterline, and to focus on a single block for 30 seconds at a time. Which means I didn't have to change that, it's actually perfect for supercavitation AP shells. What a coinky dink, it's almost like that works really well. So immediately you can see here that now the Meg is still in the lead, but oh look at this. The AP Meg, which is just what I call it, has already taken out some steam turbines. So where that is here. These shells penetrate very, very deeply. In fact, I don't know how many layers this is, but this is a lot of layers. And it's already threatening the AI. We're about 30 seconds into the fight. So heavy penetrators below the surface of the water. I've talked about this before, but works very, very well. And you'll see here, the regular Meg's guns don't have as good penetrating power. So if you happen to have extraordinarily thick armor, you can tank its shells slightly better than it can tank yours. But there is a strict time limit on this because those shells will batter their way through you. They'll just kind of brute force it. There's no subtlety here. So if you do want to take the Meg on mano a mano, as it were, basically you have to copy a lot of what it does, because it's a very well-designed ship, to be honest. You'll also notice that the Meg's lambs tends to fry a fair amount of those shells. That is because those shells are slower. Like, they don't have sabot rounds, or sabot bodies in them, so they have slightly more of an arc to them. Their trajectory isn't as flat, which means they stay above the water a little bit longer, which means that unless they're aiming quite low down, you're gonna get that lambs frying them. That is something I kind of have to live with. And hopefully the game doesn't just decide to make a fool of me and have the Meg win, because RNGesus does kind of play around in From the Depths a little bit. And right here you can see right there that those kinetic missiles are actually starting to pay for themselves a little bit, because they can reach through and they drain that lambs. That's very important. So big kinetic missiles can just help your shells, whatever the shells are, get in there. And there's another turbine, and this is really important because there's a lot of, actually all the important stuff in the Megalodon is down below the waterline, which is means that is absolutely where you should aim in order to disable it, because we've taken out a lot of turbines already. Like I said, threatening the AI right here. We actually took out the. Actually, we've taken out the main. That is in fact the main, the shell customizer for the main guns. So even though the Meg is still taking the lead, because sometimes it does that, it's not going to be able to reload its guns, which is very, very useful indeed. Meanwhile, geez, these things spawn a long way apart. Meanwhile, on the AP Meg, you can kind of see over here that, yep, we're still not seeing vital components right here. Block spam kind of works against the Meg's guns, but all it really does is buy you time. Incidentally, you'll notice that the Meg is aiming below the waterline, and that's why I kind of say it wasn't designed to fight itself, because the armor right on the edge of the waterline, and you can, where is it? There it is. You can see it kind of has some heavy armor backing. It doesn't have heavy armor backing below that, so it's kind of got a thick but squishy underbelly, relatively speaking, which is why it's a good idea to aim for that. So, yep, going way over here, way over here. So we're currently losing the hit points race, but in terms of sniping out vital components, we are actually getting in there. We're getting in there deep. Yeah, so what else can we talk about? Not much. You're kind of seeing what's happening already. It's very evenly matched because these, like I said, I haven't changed any of the blocks. These things are basically identical. So yeah, it's like I talked about in my part 1 of like how to beat the Meg. Like supercavitation shells are really your best friend. Like really, they are your best friend. They're so super handy for that. Once again, those kinetic missiles. And now finally the AP Meg is in the lead. It's starting to get that HP lead. Let's see right here. Got this narrow little hole that nonetheless getting right in there. And now we're threatening the lambs. This is the other important bit. If you can... Yep, we have actually managed to snipe out one of the pumps here somehow. That's where the frag is useful. Is because that spreads out just enough to make a mess of vital components. Now we're just inching along, inching along. I would not recommend just modifying a Meg just to beat it with itself, so to speak. I am planning to make a proper BorderWise flavored canoe that can take on the Meg. And this exercise actually is very helpful. So if you're ever having trouble with a faction craft, reverse engineering it is a really good idea. I say that because I always forget that that is allowed and that I can do that. And yeah, so you basically reverse engineer it, or do what I've done here, and you take the thing and you think, how can I make this thing beat itself? Yeah, see, this makes so much difference. Just getting in there. Just if you get in there, it makes all the difference. Notice that this thing's buoyancy is starting to be messed with, because another thing that's a feature of the Meg is that if you go into the armor here, you'll notice that it actually has a fair amount of alloy sandwiched in here. Now, there are more than a few people in the From the Depths community who will tell you that this is a big, big mistake, and like basically to use alloy as armor. And they're right, because pound for pound, metal is pretty much always better. Alloy is kind of a niche use, and the reason the Meg has that is because otherwise it might not float. This does mean you'll notice it's kind of leaning to the side a little bit. This is why you don't want to use alloy as hull armor, because once you lose it, one of your main sources of buoyancy is gone. So, you know, air-filled compartments actually work a little bit better than that, and are certainly cheaper. And that's also why having a roll PID, just keeping it handy, is also very useful. Just go quickly have a look at the AP Meg. Oh, you see? Yeah. If you go up against the... Well, I love how From the Depths does this. It just loves to prove me wrong. Just loves to prove me wrong. Well, it's not proven me wrong yet. But, yeah, the Meg, when I say it has less penetrating power, it's just that. It has less. It does not mean it doesn't have any, because, like I said, it will just brute force its way through you. The Meg just lost a lot of health, though. I wonder what happened here. Hello, it just... Yeah, well, okay, yeah. Yeah, it just lost its main C-Wiz. So that is the wonderful thing about even fuseless penetrators, really, is because they can do stuff like... How did that even get in here? It's hard to draw a straight line for how this got in here, but it definitely did. Whistled straight through and took out one of the main things right there. I thought you were supposed to aim for things below the water. What are you doing? So now we've got a 2% HP lead, and that's a lot better. And now, when we fire our missiles, assuming that they're still active, they might not be. Nope, they definitely are. It means that... Oh, hello. That makes a bit of difference. We appear to have... severely impacted this thing's torpedo defense. So now you can see this is starting to creep up, slowly but surely. One of the problems, I will admit, if you're relying on hitting the Megalodon below the waterline, is that it means that the guns can keep firing at you. So an alternative thing is just try and thump the guns. And I mean literally, just get thump damage on the guns so you take out the firing pieces. And an interesting thing to note, if you go for the Megalodon underneath, is that you actually mess with its buoyancy. If you take out its main sources of power, which is those big steam engines, it starts to have to juggle its power requirements a little bit, which means it kind of goes up and down, like it sinks below the water. As you can see, now the torpedoes are joining in on the fun. Oh, this is really tantalizing. That actually might have been the ammo controller for the Seawards, actually. Go see how the AP Megalodon is getting along. Not super good. In fact, yeah, this is a problem. Damage-wise, the regular Meg does have kind of an advantage. And we've turned its propellers off. Thank goodness for reaching deep inside a thing and tickling its innards. Wait for it. Yep, there you go. So now we're getting right in there and just ruining this thing's day. Makes you think, doesn't it, that real-life battleships had armor-piercing shells for very good reason. So yeah, that is nice. Super nice. To be perfectly honest with you, I'm just enjoying it. I'm just enjoying the spectacle of the Meg getting rocked, even if it is by another Megalodon. Baby steps. Baby steps. Also, those connected missiles can still do damage, even if they just glide into the target. That is hilarious. Yes, like, I should mention I've tested this twice before. This is test number 3. With this particular model of the AP Meg. And it's interesting, RNG does play a large part in mirror matches, even if one of the mirrors, so to speak, is modified. The first round, the AP Meg only lost about 5% health, and the second one, the second test, it was reduced to about 85.4% health. It's interesting, and it's all to do with whether the shells actually take out the guns or not. I think this thing has stopped firing entirely, though. That's convenient. There you can see that heavy armor belt right on the waterline. It's actually kind of a good idea to reinforce your ships just at the waterline, because that's actually where a lot of stuff is likely to hit you. Interesting. Nope, it's still firing, by the looks of it. Let's just go quickly have a look at our friend over here. Down by 11% health, which isn't actually that bad. But it does have its innards exposed. Quite a lot. It's actually amazing that this, who made the Meg? Carbengo made the Meg. Or at least was the original author of it. The fact that this thing can still fire even while missing, like, an entire side of its hull and all its guts on display, that's metal. That is like those videos you see of, like, antelope in Kruger National Park with their guts literally hanging out, but they're still trying to fight off the hyenas or whatever that's trying to eat them alive. It's impressive stuff. Worthy of respect. You can't see it, but I am saluting. I am saluting Carbengo and the Meg. So what actually are we learning from this experience? I should probably mention that, because problem with using AP shells like this is because they do less raw damage and they overpenetrate, they disable things pretty easily, but finishing them off does take a bit of a hot second, so... main lesson is supercavitation AP shells, especially if they are railguns. They're very, very good. They're good in general, but they're really damn good against the Megalodon, because it's got... kind of just relies on armor thickness rather than armor design just below the waterline. And it's a straight path straight into the vital components of the thing, the LAMs, the AI, and the steam engines. And in fact, looking at the damage that the AP Meg has suffered, that's a very good demonstration of that. Look at this, like all the turbines, the batteries, the LAMs, the AI compartment, where is it? Here it is. They're all on that same level down there. And, like, yeah, if you aim, like, on the specific line, which is below the waterline, you've got essentially a straight line, in, like... straight to it that is not actually guarded directly by anything. There's no shields down there, should mention. Should add, like, yeah, and also heavy AP shells like this have a tendency to decapitate turrets from beneath. Like, in this particular time, it happened with the Seawiz turret right there, but I've seen it do it to the main guns too. It just takes out enough essential blocks that the entire turret cap falls off. Actually, more than the turret, more than that, it just takes out the turret block itself. So yeah, that's, like I said, pure AP rounds might be better if you want really fast shells that just want to poke holes through the thing. And just have that flatter trajectory for LAMs evading. And also the Meg's munition defense actually works pretty well against itself, apart from its main guns, as you might expect. It's got a really strong LAMs, as you noticed, notably strong LAMs, big LAMs. It's got a nice combination of defenses, so to speak. It's got that railgun Seawiz, it's got the LAMs, it's got those missile interceptors, it's got torpedo interceptors as well, by the way. It's launching them at the back, like so. Little shark poppers, as I often like to refer to them. And yeah, so it's like, if you basically want to know what works against the Meg defense-wise, copy the stuff that's on it. Like, again, sounds obvious, but it's taken a hot minute to occur to me, because I'm dumb sometimes. So, yeah, and the torpedo use missiles with a lot of health, so you'll notice that, I wasn't actually checking, but a lot of the, I don't think the missiles that were being fired over at the AP Meg, let's actually check. There's a way to check this, because it aims below the waterline. Let's see. Yep, the deck is mostly unmarked, which means that the missiles pretty much never... This damage right here, that was a stray shell, and I remember seeing that. But yeah, just the little Seawiz going brrrt right there. Little decoys right there. Yeah, just having missiles with a lot of health makes a huge amount of difference, actually. It's better a missile that gets there and does something rather than a higher DPS missile, so to speak, that is less likely to get there. Torps are mostly for finishing the job. The only reason these things are getting anywhere close to the Megalodon is because the Seawiz was taken out. The Seawiz also has supercavitation rounds, so it's good for torpedoes as well. And yeah, now we're gonna hop back into the design, and I'll show you a variant that I came up with, which I'm not going to text, which I'm not going to show you, so to speak, because I want to keep this video reasonably lengthed. Is length a word? Well, it is now. And also because, well, I'll explain in a hot second, so I will see you back in the designer. Alrighty then, we are back in the designer, and we're looking at the AP Meg again. But there's a slight difference now. The thing about, and thank goodness the developers made this a feature, as of a few updates ago, ERA basically neutralizes hollow point shells and thump damage. Like, basically, if a hollow point shell hits a block of ERA, it's basically cancelled. It's cancelled straight off Twitter, darling, so Works really well. So this is a variant of the AP Meg that I did test, and it is just plastered with ERA along most of the hull where I can kind of fit it. And I'm mentioning this just because I can only tentatively recommend doing this, and as much as I would like to show you, I'm not going to. And even though ERA like basically vaporizes a 6-meter long railgun shell, the reason I'm not going to show you and the reason I'm not going to demonstrate it is this. Megalodon, exactly 29,000 blocks. So again, kudos to Carbengo and whoever else worked on the Meg. It's a nice round number, easy to remember. This thing, with all the ERA plastered on it, and I didn't even do full coverage, the block count has gone up quite a bit. And block count doesn't matter a lot because I tested this thing against the regular Meg exactly once, and the game could not handle it. My CPU could not handle it. So we've gone up by about 2,000 blocks from 29,000 to 31,000, and my CPU cried and then died, and so that was that. But just keep in mind, this does work. In fact, bugger it, I am going to spawn the Meg in. You've twisted my arm, guys. You've twisted my arm. And hopefully we'll get to see... briefly the ERA work. My goodness, that was instantaneous. Is the ACB going to do its thing? Oh, now it is. Oh, hello. Interesting, the lambs is actually doing stuff. Good news, the lambs can stop shells. Ah, jeez, the thing moves too fast. Oh my goodness. That's the other problem, is that it has exploding particle cannons. You move too fast. I am such a liar. I said I wasn't going to do this, but I can't help... Ah, yes, there. 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 Right here. See? 6-meter long, hollow point Sabo, stopped dead by a tiny 100% expendable block. It does work. It does work quite nicely. Like I said, it does not work so well if large patches of your hull are not covered in it. So, I'm going to pause right on this glorious scene of senseless violence, and that'll be the video for you. So, what have we learned is that if you're stuck with fighting a craft from the depths, reverse engineer it and then modify it, and like, you know, learn from the stuff that is shooting at you. And also, super cavitation rounds are beautiful, kinetic missiles are beautiful, and penetrator frags are beautiful. And the anti-munition defenses on the Megalodon are beautiful. We just lost our well, no, we didn't lose our Sea-Wiz, thank goodness. Wait a minute. No, we lost our Sea-Wiz. All is lost, disregard previous half an hour. So, thank you all so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Support me on Patreon or YouTube membership if you like. It really helps, and there's fun perks in it for you. Thank you to all my current supporters, and I will see you next time in From the Depths Most Wanted. Farewell.